My HOA is suing me for $2,600 over leaving a broken door on my patio for a few weeks. I'm in my late 20s, just got married, and have 2 kids, 4 and 2, and a very busy job, which is 50 to 70 hours plus a week. Myself and my then fiance and 2 kids, age 3 and almost 1, bought our first place, a condo. The condo looked okay from what we saw when we walked through it and inspected it. We noticed a few minor issues, but every place that we saw had something that was needed. It ended up being a total dump. I have had to replace so many things within this house, and it has made my already busy life a living heck. All of the doors had issues that I've had to fix. The sinks, the faucets in the bathrooms, kitchen sink issues constantly, which are fixed now, the dishwasher going out, and so on. This is why I had the door outside while doing repairs. In the last 2 months, my work schedule heavily complicated being able to communicate with anyone regarding this, basically 24/7. I've also been pretty busy getting married and planning and going through with getting married, and I guess kids take some work as well. So here's the timeline. Back in September 2019, we moved into the condo in a suburb outside of Denver. Come February or March, we're fined for leaving a door on our outside porch times 3, totaling $400. By March 12th, notices were sent in the mail. We did not see a single letter of this. The person from the HOA that I spoke to acknowledged that at least some of the mail got sent back to them. In March 2021, the following year, the HOA sends us to collections and we receive a letter in the mail, and I immediately call the collections agency. The next month, I request time to speak with the HOA board, and I'm not guaranteed a time. I'm unable to make it to the meeting due to my work constraints and was not even guaranteed any time. What the heck? So then I get married and have my honeymoon that month, which I notified both the collections agency and our HOA about. And today, I got served for an early June court date. Here's some facts from our perspective. So our HOA assessments have always been paid on time, and we've never ever received a letter, call, or even a notice on our door about an issue or a violation. You see, this all has happened over the last 2 months during likely, hopefully, the busiest time of my life. After late fees, interest, collections fees, and now lawyer fees, the price will be $2,600. What can I do about this? Should I just pay this and move on, like literally move the heck out of this condo? Should I lawyer up? Jury trial? This is putting me over the edge of stress-wise, and I'm not sure what to do. What do you think of this answer? Get a copy of the bylaws and CC&Rs and learn the rules. Associations have a ton of power, and you'll have to play by those rules to get anywhere. Yeah, if you don't know what you're doing in this, you gotta get a lawyer or somebody that does know the laws in and out so they can help you out with these crazy dirty HOAs. OP was downvoted like crazy in the comments and the post was locked. Do you think this was fair? This is called HOA wants to have adult-only swimming hours, 2 hours in the evening, 4 nights a week, posted by Mean Drunk R2D2. This was something that came up last week after our monthly HOA meeting. This wasn't a well thought out plan, as our neighborhood is full of kids, and many adults and kids swim in the evening. Some of the adults who either have no kids or the kids are grown and out of the house thought it would be a great idea to go and put in this new rule in a low attendance HOA meeting. The next day, they made the announcement in our neighborhood Facebook group. Now, my kids are younger, and no way would they take advantage of swimming from 9 to 11 p.m. today, but I know many other parents with older kids who do. I simply told them that they need to look at the legalities of this rule, as it does violate the Fair Housing Act against familial status. Some of the kidless parents started ripping on me that it's not a thing and that I should go ahead and contact a lawyer about it. I did. He said that if I wanted, we could file a case immediately and it would levy a large fine on the HOA as well as damages. I declined, but I passed that information to the HOA in that Facebook group post, and that it would be very wise to not put that rule into effect and to contact the HOA lawyers before doing it. Within a couple of hours, the HOA stated that they were going to put the changes on hold while they contact their lawyers. 2 days later, they made a new post basically stating that I was right and that the change would not be able to take effect due to the FHA. I make sure that my kids are extra loud when I see those annoying people, not really, they're just loud all the time, at that pool since that happened, and they just glare at me, mad that I took away their adult time at the pool. An OP with nearly 1,000 downvotes replies, This isn't for lap time or anything more than allowing adults to gather at the pool to drink and not really be mindful with language around kids. I didn't ruin anything, but let the HOA know about the legalities. In a few years, I'll be taking my kids out for night swims there. Negative 973 votes in one day. A dangerous game, posted by Kurorosu. This is my first post here. I decided that this may be another method of catharsis for me. I do have many stories peppered throughout my life that I want to share, but this was the first one that came to mind. This one has to do with my childhood and dealing with a psychotic and racist aunt and uncle. When I was a child, I was often assaulted and bullied for being a mixed-blood kid, mulatto, by both my own family and kids in school. There are many things that my aunt and uncle did to me and got away with, which I will share the highlights of later. This story, however, is not one of those. My uncle was the alpha tormentor between the two. Both my aunt and uncle still lived with my grandparents, so there was no way to avoid them because I had to go to my grandparents' house after school while my dad was still at work. My uncle liked to play games with me in order to turn me into a fearless pit dog, as he put it, when I asked him one day why he was tormenting so much. When he said that, the fact that he was being completely honest as well as smiling about it, I decided right then and there that this man was my enemy and would have to deal with him accordingly. If he wanted a pit dog, he was going to get one. After overcoming my shock of his honest answer, I said, F you, uncle, just F you. One of the games that he loved to play was chasing me down the road to my grandparents' house, which felt like an honest attempt to literally run me over. He'd always do this as I was walking home to my grandparents' house after school. Luckily, most times he ended up just chasing me off the road. The game started like this. He would stop his truck at the end of the road that my grandparents' place was on and rev the engine of his truck 3 times. That was the signal that the game was about to begin. After the third rev, he would hit the gas and come screaming down the road toward me. I would have to leap off the road to avoid being ran over. After at least a couple of months of dealing with this, I had enough. I was tired of feeling afraid of walking down that street. I thought it over for a while before I decided that I would get revenge. On the days when I wasn't being chased, I started to count how many steps it took to get to an old stump on the side of the road that was hidden by briars. I'd walk backwards just so I could eye the distance between the end of that road and the stump so I would know when to run. 17 steps. It would take 17 steps from the time he'd start roaring down that road at me to get to that stump. The day finally came about a couple weeks later. When I heard his truck, I wasn't afraid anymore. I was angry. As per normal, he revved his engine 3 times and then gunned it around the corner. I waited until he was close enough before I ran as fast as I could up the side of the road and behind the stump, throwing my backpack into a deer trail that I could jump into just in case my plan failed, and then quickly turned around towards the stump and the oncoming truck bearing down on me. As expected, he followed me up the side of the road, too fixed on me to pay any attention to where he was going. The next few moments were beautiful. The briars parted like the Red Sea, and to my delight, I saw his eyes go wide as he realized what he was about to smash into. He yanked the steering wheel to the left, his front right tire going over the stump, which launched him into the air. As he flew past me, I could see the look of terror on his face, and grinning madly, I began to shout insults at him as his truck nearly flipped in midair. Instead of flipping, the truck roughly came back down on 4 wheels, and he continued down the road to my grandparents' house and parked in the gravel driveway. I grabbed my backpack, ran up the trail, and hid. I didn't come out until after dark when my dad came to get me. I knew the sound of my dad's car, a Datsun B210, so when I heard him coming up the road, I immediately came out, waved him down, and quickly jumped into the passenger seat. My dad asked me concerned as to why I was out there. At first, I just kept telling him over and over that we needed to just go straight home and under no circumstances go to my grandparents' house. When my dad kept asking why, I finally told him everything that happened. Without another word, he turned the car around, silently fuming, and drove us home. I don't know if my dad talked to my uncle after what happened, but what I do know is that game never happened again. That game, at least. This is a story from the distant past when I was a kid, early 80s Australia. My family lived in suburban Townsville then. We had a fairly tight-knit community on our street and all generally got along well. Our neighbor on the right side was a lovely old lady, but I have no idea what her name was, but us kids all called her Gran. She was a tough old bird, lived in the bush all her life, and had a real no-nonsense attitude. On our left side was a block of 2 flats with tenants that seemed to come and go all the time. At this particular time, there was a middle-aged woman and her 2 kids. This woman, as I recall, was a bit of a witch and had a real better-than-you attitude. No idea what her name was, but we'll refer to her as Karen, because it fits. Now, Gran loved her garden and was always working in it. She grew beautiful flowers. Her garden was always kept in perfect condition and was essentially what kept her going in her old age. The local kids were welcome in her garden, just as long as we did not make a mess. Karen, on the other hand, loved her dog. It was some poodle cross thing and an ugly mutt in my opinion. Unlike the rest of our dogs, it was not allowed to roam the streets and play with the kids, but was kept inside except for the daily walk each morning on a leash. I bet you can see where this is heading. One morning, we heard sounds of an argument coming from Gran's front yard. Apparently, Karen had decided to help herself to some of Gran's flowers while walking the dog. When told off by Gran, she decided to insult Gran's garden, which was a very bad mistake. So the 2 exchanged words before Karen stalked off. We thought that was that, until Gran started to find dog crap in her yard every day. Every day. As most of our dogs roam the street, she could not say it was happening deliberately, just that it was strange that the dogs had avoided the place until now. Then we find out that Karen has changed her routine and was walking her dog at dawn each day. My dad spotted her as he was going to work, and of course Karen was using the opportunity to have her dog take a dump on Gran's lawn. When Gran found out, she was furious. I was at school at the time, so I did not see it, but Mom recounted the events. Apparently, Gran had taken a garden trowel of dog crap and gone over to Karen's door where she had told Karen that she would rub your face in the next dog crap I see on the lawn. Karen responded with a tirade of abuse and then slammed the door before Gran threw the crap at her. So the stage is set. On to Act 2. Scene: early Saturday morning. We were woken by screams at daybreak. It sounded like there was an almighty fight happening at Gran's place. All the neighbors rushed out to the most amazing scene ever. In Gran's front yard, on the lawn, lay Karen face down with Gran perched astride her back. One hand on the back of Karen's neck, and the other hand with a firm grip on Karen's hair as she rubbed her face back and forth through a nice fresh dog crap. Karen was screaming bloody murder between gasping for breath and spitting out grass and crap. Gran was shouting, "I warned you! I bloody warned you, you stupid witch!" So it turns out the cunning old girl knew Karen was too stupid to take a warning, so she had got up early so she could lay in wait and then ambush Karen in the garden. Karen was never the same again. She moved out in less than a week. The best laugh I think I ever had. Never mess with the grannies, folks. My neckbeard ex had a traditional wife fetish, posted by Cardinal Cherry. I'm not exactly sure where to even start with this roller coaster of a story. This happened a few years ago when I decided to go to Canada on a 1-year college adventure. Not only was it my first time traveling alone, but it was the best experience for me to learn French. Now, I must say that I have no clue of the day-to-day life from the US, so it was a bit of a culture shock when I first arrived at the border. I would say it was unfortunate fate because my credentials weren't up to date or straight up couldn't be found, so I was stuck in the border for a little while. This is where I met Neckbeard. Let's call him A. A and I met in one of those airport cafes and we surprisingly hit it off quite well. He seemed smart and a responsible young adult, totally not what you could expect from a neckbeard. Aside from the milady part, he did that thing. And upon hearing my situation, he proposed I could stay with him. "I got an extra room, but you won't need to pay for a hotel," he said. Now, I thank my paranoid of a mother drilling fear into any type of human interaction because in that moment, I felt something was off about A. I wasn't sure what it was, but I refused his offer. He was a little older than me, and I was not comfortable living alone with a man, a stranger, for X amount of time. I stayed in the hotel for a couple of nights, and A kept me company most of the time, showing me around places near the border. He still brought up the idea of staying with him every so often, but I kept brushing him off. He started to be very persistent the more we waited, saying how nice his house is, that he lived very close to the airport, and on and on. just about anything to try and convince me to stay at his place, but I never backed down. Finally, when I was indeed able to pass the border, I thought that would be the last I'd see of A, but some dumb part of me gave him my phone number and promised to meet up from time to time. This eventually led for him to try and push a relationship with me. Now, I still felt off about A, but over the months of my stay in Canada, I'd grown to know him, so I thought, hey, why not? It's just a basic short relationship, and once I go back home, it'll be the end of it, right? Well, this is Neckbeard Stories, and nothing ever goes smoothly. I learned very quickly that A had certain tastes. He liked me best when I'm wearing dresses and heels, and he would turn up his nose when I'm wearing sweatpants and boy clothing. He wanted me to wear his gifts, which was girly things only, and he liked to watch me cook for him and clean my dorm. He didn't help, but he liked to watch. Creepy. He liked me when I put pop music on instead of my usual rock, and quickly made it clear that my nerdy taste in anime, video games, comics, and so on weren't his cup of tea. But that doesn't include him, of course, because he gets to like anime, video games, and comics, but not me. We once had a fight about this, and I hurt his feelings by saying his favorite anime sucked, and I still don't regret it. There were moments where he tried to teach me to be a better cook so I can make him better meals, how to clean better, how to walk and talk and even smile around his friends, so the relationship was going great. He was especially disgusted in my pagan and witchcraft interest, something that I truly identify with myself, and hearing him call me a weirdo and other hurtful things really brought my trust in him practically down to a zero. Still, for some unknown reason, I remained with him while walking around in eggshells. Breaking my confidence must have been part of his plan, because as soon as I stopped being so vocal about my interest, he started to praise me for being so obedient and nice and caring, and worst of all, wife material. It was like he was checking off some checklist. Who the heck is this guy? The guy from the airport was decent at best, but this man that I was dating treated me like some sort of China doll that he was obsessed over. This isn't without mentioning the jealousy of men so much looking in my general direction, not letting me do any of the heavy lifting, expecting me to be available at any beck and call like some canary. And even if his friends seemed aware of his excessive behavior and said I wasn't the first he had done this to. I was sick of it. I just wanted to go home and never ever hear this man ever again. But it gets worse. I'm very close to my family. It's a very cultural thing, so the culture shock of A telling me that he hasn't called his parents mom and dad in years and then moved away at 18 was totally an independent man, and I guess it's that easy when you live in your dad's summer home, living the American dream, I guess. Whatever. This means that I received many texts and calls from my parents, something that A found weird and like the rest of my existence. But he was shocked, above all, that my parents didn't look like me. My whole family is very dark-skinned, but I was born extremely pale, so anyone that doesn't know me wouldn't put the connections. And A threw a fit. Why didn't you tell me your family was black? I was confused. My hometown is very diverse, so I didn't see the issue with mentioning my family's ethnicity. He always knew I was a foreigner, so I didn't think he had an issue with it. I didn't think you'd care. You know I'm not from here. Are you adopted? Now I'm getting agitated because it's been months of this questioning. I am tired and my self-worth is non-existent, and the last thing I need was him making me feel more like an alien. What? No, why would you think that?
No reason. You're perfect. But your family.
My family is what?
Well, I just don't want our children to have their genes.
Excuse me, children? This man, honest to God, thought I wanted to spend 1 second in his bed and have his children. A and I had never had anything during my stay. He pushed the idea, but I always tried to start something and I never gave in. A, I am 19. I have my whole life ahead of me. I don't want your children. A didn't take that well. He continued to scream for a while between his expectations of what I should be to him and my own ambitions. It almost got so bad that the student next to me knocked on the door to check on us. I soon kicked A out and never saw him again. At least until the very end of the year. A was being extremely quiet, something that was never normal, and it was honestly freaking me out. While I was getting ready to leave and finally go home, I got a call from A's best friend. Let's call him B. B was also a decent guy. I could say we were friends for the time I dated A, but he was also well aware of my hate for A at this point. So much so that he strictly told A that I hated him, and I assumed that he was on my side out of pity, maybe knowing this wasn't the first time A has had trouble with women. Go figure. So I tell him everything that happened, how A had been treating me with his weird obsession and being the perfect wife, and his issues with my family's ethnicity. Not me, of course, I have the perfect skin tone, so it's okay. Yes, he said that. And I told him that I would be leaving, so just to pass the message, I'm done with him. I wanted nothing to do with A. If he was being a coward somewhere, that wasn't my issue. I had my plane ticket and I wouldn't have to go anywhere near him ever again. But guess that was too good to be true, because A appeared at the airport. What are you doing here? I asked.
I'm here to pick you up.
My blood ran cold. Pick me up? What for? I'm going home. He starts to get aggressive really quickly, and honestly, it scares me. I had refused most of the advances that A made towards me, and thankfully he wasn't forceful with his intimidating height. He was like 6'4" compared to me, 5'2". He was freakishly tall. But this time, he seemed to get sick of my resistance, something that thankfully never broke from me.
Listen to me, you're going to stop this nonsense already, and you're going to get in my car and go back home with me.
I truly felt like crying. I had a feeling that if I step into that forsaken summer house of his, I would never leave ever again. I'm not going anywhere with you. Leave me alone, A. And I ran. Yes, it was childish, but I was scared and I'm tiny and I can hide pretty easily in the crowd, so A lost sight of me fairly quickly. The jerk had the audacity to stay in the airport until my flight was called, and finally I was heading back home. I remember crying inside the plane, and once I arrived back home, I was terrified of seeing him there, waiting. Thankfully, I don't think he followed me. I remained paranoid for months after it happened, and I truly think he would have gone after me if he knew where I lived. He never bothered to learn about my hometown. And after months of nothing, I could finally breathe. I'm definitely never going back to Canada. Now here's some more crazy things that happened. A made it very clear that I should sit a certain way when out for dinner. He always compared me to his ex, saying she cheated on him for someone better. And now that I think about it, I don't blame her. Cheating is still bad, but dealing with A was a nightmare. He constantly judged my looks and almost always liked to choose my clothing and even tried to throw away some of them. A really liked the color gray and convinced me once to change my hair from red to gray, and it completely fried my hair and I had to go get a pixie cut soon after the breakup. Whenever I acted out of line, he would always talk in a patronizing way of how I shouldn't scream at him because it made me look crazy and it was simply not how a woman should act. He pretty much blamed me for any inconveniences, even when he had no money, and he said I was too high maintenance. I didn't even want his stupid gifts. One time, I brought a gift from my hometown, and he completely judged the heck out of it because the packaging had a little bit of sand on it. A had this little thought that I lived in poverty because it's not the US, so the sand thing just made my gift look cheap to him. Wow, that is harassment through and through, and I am glad that you got out of that guy's sight. When a ranked player hits on a casual, posted by CJ Wells, 13. The setting. Walking through the food court at your community college, you see an attractive girl playing a game on her laptop. This is a game you used to play and have a lot of experience in, and you really want to talk to her, so you figure that it'll serve as a good point of conversation to open a dialogue between you. Great, lovely, totally acceptable, if executed correctly and respectfully. What he thinks happened. You initiate the conversation by tapping on her shoulder and referencing how old and played out the game is. She takes out an earbud and gives you a look that seems responsive, so you ask about what deck she plays. Having no experience with these particular decks, and noticing that she's only stage 12 and probably doesn't know any better, you decide to dazzle her by describing your competitive decks in great detail, eventually commandeering her laptop to show her your builds and how to get them. After a while of explaining your superior tactics and expedient duel victories, from which she is surely impressed and soaking wet, she says she doesn't play competitive and isn't really interested in dragon decks. What? What does that even mean? Surely you've misheard her. Winning is the whole point of the game, right? She'll never win like that. You ask her why, but you're too dumbfounded to hear her response. Something about insects or plant or some other weak build. You shake it off, and in a last-ditch effort, claim that you've never played competitive either, but in ranked, you are Legend 3 tier, maintaining your dignity but appearing relatable. Nice catch. Time to relate it back to the real world so you can get her number. You decide to tell her that you deleted the game a long time ago because winning got too tedious. This will emphasize to her that, again, you were an incredible player, but being so much better than everyone else became boring, and you became too busy and important to continue dealing out whoopings every day. She nods, speechless, clearly astounded. You scrap the number idea for now, because clearly she'll seek you out when she wants to start playing seriously, and it's better to make her come to you. You play it cool as you make your exit, claiming friends are waiting for you, because friends are impressive, right? As you slowly walk away from her, you make sure to eye her up and down so you can locate her later and continue this flirtation. This feels like a victory, and if she doesn't seek you out in the next few days, you'll find her again. What actually happened? You're sitting in the food court at school, minding your own business, playing a game on your laptop instead of working on the paper you have due tomorrow, when all of a sudden you feel a tap on the shoulder. You turn and take out an earbud, as is customary, and a kinda nerdy but normal looking dude that you've never seen before just points at your laptop and says,
I remember that game. It's so broken now.
Not knowing what to say and still being mid-duel, you just say something to the effect of, oh yeah, I still like it though, and go to finish. He asks what deck you're using, so you, still trying to avoid homework and genuinely open to conversation, tell him. He clearly has no idea what Sylvan plants are, so you ask him what he used, and oh boy, was that a mistake. He immediately goes into detail about all the elements of this hyper-meta Stardust Dragon deck, what cards to use, what boxes to buy from, how to play the hand, the works. You can tell he thinks you're new at this because he asks if you know how to synchro summon. You keep trying to interject and tell him that despite your low level, you actually had to delete the app from your phone due to overuse, and technically playing on Steam was a relapse, but you can't get a word in edgewise. Great, so he wants to teach you how to play. Suddenly, this strange man puts his hands on your laptop in order to show you his build in the catalog. You're generally polite and tolerant, but now you're kinda mad and very uncomfortable, and it takes everything in your body to not reach out and break his arm. Minutes go by and he continues to talk about his OP deck, leaving no room for response. When an opening finally presents itself, you tell him that you're not competitive and don't play dragons. This apparently throws him for a loop because his face goes totally blank, and all he says is, why? You proceed to tell him that you mainly play plants and insects because of your hobbies IRL and are interested in collecting whole sets and seeing how they were designed to complement each other. His face does not change and he blurts out that he used to play casually too. Okay, sure. In an awkward effort to save the conversation, he returns to the fact that he no longer plays the game and goes on to give the reasons. Winning had become too boring and the quality of the game was trash. Wow, what a thing to say to someone who is currently playing that very game. At this point, you're just tired and waiting for him to finish talking, but he goes on to describe how he would win every duel within 5 turns. Eventually, he stops and you facilitate an awkward pause in order to emphasize the depth of the discussion. He takes the hint and goes back away, citing some of his friends were waiting for him. As you turn back to your laptop, you feel eyes on you, and you look back to catch him creepily running his gaze down the length of your body. You shudder, return to your game, and try not to think about what just happened. Sued the HOA president. He keeps finding me, so I ruin his HOA. Click the video on your screen so you get this awesome story, and I'll see you there.